Hello and welcome. My name is Casey O'Brien, and I'm the Director of Programming at Gathering Ground. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a 40-something woman with short silver brown hair, glasses, a cobalt blue blazer, and a bright yellow scarf. This video provides an introduction to our Elevating Equity Anti-Oppression Collaborative Learning Program and the launch of our 2024 cohort, for which we hope you'll consider joining us. Gathering Ground is a multiracial, multicultural, multigenerational, and socioeconomically diverse movement of people committed to taking action that creates thriving and equitable communities. Our mission is to foster community cohesion and collaborative action by bringing together highly diverse groups of people with varied backgrounds, lived experiences, expertise, and influence to amplify community dialogue around critical issues, build and strengthen networks, encourage cross-sector and multicultural partnerships, and cultivate equitable community-rooted solutions. The Elevating Equity Anti-Oppression Collaborative Learning Program brings together approximately 100 nonprofit and philanthropic sector workers who span a range in racialized, gendered, and classed identities in professional industries. In a series of 6 sequential workshops, which span March through June 2024, helmed by Justin Lang of Helumbo LLC, our lead designer and facilitator. This workshop series is rooted in Paulo Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed and supports individuals and organizations who are increasingly concerned about the perpetuation of colonialism, racism, and oppression in our communities, particularly through the intersection of the capitalist state, nonprofit, and philanthropic sectors. The workshop supports participants in a cohort learning setting as we collectively examine individual roles and organizations through an anti-oppressive framework in order to develop strategies for identifying and disrupting oppressions in and emanating from our organizations and fields. We foresee the following set of outcomes for the cohort member participants: developing and/or strengthening an understanding of a capitalist or colonial lens of oppression and its expression as race, class, and gender. Learning to map the dynamics and systems operating in our workplaces and communities. Creating strategies that challenge the way our organizations reproduce colonization. Establishing and increasing relationships with people interested in dismantling and disrupting oppression in our sector. Learning or deepening practices of experimenting with disruption strategies.
We see a bunch of themes, we see a bunch of symptoms, right? But what's going on underneath that? And then he has some big ideas about what those issues are, right? And I would say he's under-examined as an anti-colonial thinker, and that he's naming things like divide and rule, right? Which I would say is one of the ways that nonprofits work is by breaking up a whole geography into many little slices and breaking up a bunch of problems into many little problems: housing, art, etc. And then he goes on to say, and there's some strategies to challenge those, right? Unity, organizing, etc. And it's a kind of dialectic that I think is actually a useful way of looking at problems. Basically, your current problem, name it, see what's going on underneath it, imagine its opposite, and try to develop strategies to get there, right? And so we're going to work on that method together. And the other part of that, I would say, is that Freire is also interested in how we engage one another, I would say, how we organize, and we make that a pedagogical process. And that means situating ourselves as students and teachers, teachers and students. And so we're going to use this idea of what are the core underlying themes that he identifies of what colonialization looks like, and add to that a couple from Frantz Fanon and Kwame Nkrumah. And then we're going to look at what his ideas of the big ways to challenge these are. And with those hopefully big themes, you can then use those in specifics that we might try to work on, right? So that's how we're going to use Freire, is both his way of explaining the big problems, some ways of approaching them, but then also how you might use that to develop strategies. So there is this term called experiments, but we can also use the term learning projects, because experiments has this history in the Black community of like very violent white supremacist things. So some people just can't work with it. It just brings up too much, right? So learning projects is there as well, but it is partly, again, I'll go back to Freire, this idea of praxis, which is we have a theory, we have action together, we see what the results are, we learn something from it, and then we see what we do next, right? So what we're wanting to explore is, can we create some experiments together or learning projects, right, that might build on what's available, right? Expand them, do something different. Maybe we'd have 3 or 4, right? We want to see what we'll be looking at doing is saying, okay, let's have a session on one of these concepts. Let's go into small groups. Let's talk about them. Let's make some connections to our workspaces, talk about each other. What are you seeing? What am I seeing? Let's come back to the big group. What did you all hear in there? Great. Let's go to the next one. Now we've gone over the big concepts of the way colonialism works. Let's go on some of the strategies to challenge it. Let's go over it. Let's go in small groups. Let's break it out. What are you seeing? What are you doing? Oh, okay. That's the challenging part. Maybe we're learning there's some things that are already going on or some things we'd like to do. Let's look at that. Take a step back. We will take a moment to look at racial capitalism first because colonialism and imperialism come out of this other thing before it. So we will have one first opening session on this term racial capitalism just to situate colonialism as something else. But then we'll get to this colonialism piece. And then we'll start in the last 3 sessions, basically start to look at, okay, what's in the room, what's happening? Are there some folks are there some ideas we might want to expand or try together, right? The thought is if we try this, we can deepen our collective political criticality, that's me included, of course, together. And we can come up with some ideas that are designed to shift resources to BIPOC communities and change narratives. That's our experiment here. That's our theory that we can. And so we'll learn from this. Hopefully all of you all will engage us with that and you will add that to that. But that's what we're trying to figure out because the number of radical communities, I would say, and who are willing to make deep change the way that Robert Allen's explaining is relatively small. We're going to have built some way that we're growing folks who want deeper change. And I don't see how we can do it and not include our workspaces if the nonprofit sector is actually causing some of the challenges.
So who is this program for? It's for staff members of all levels of nonprofit, philanthropic, and community organizations, with the expressed agreement from organizations' leadership to participate. Board members of nonprofit, philanthropic, and community organizations are also welcome to participate. And we encourage a minimum of 2 people from each organization or group to complete the program together as a way to have allyship and solidarity in the process of learning. You do not need to have prior familiarity with Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed or the other materials, but we do ask you to have an open mind and curiosity in this process. So let's talk a little bit about the content and the approach to these workshops. There are 6 workshops in the series. Each workshop is 3 hours on Zoom. There are 3 learning modules that are taught as part of this workshop series, utilizing a combination of large and small group action-oriented discussions. This is an engaged, interactive, dialogue-driven, collaborative learning experience where you will be in direct conversation with your peers, facilitators, and the Gathering Grounds team. There are 3 major learning components to the workshop series. Component 1 is in examining and deepening understanding of Freire's systemic colonizing themes, such as colonial ideology, divide and rule, neocolonialism, and acculturation. Component 2 is about applied learning, identifying how colonizing themes show up in our own workplaces and lives. Component 3 is about examination, analyzing root causes of those previously identified oppressions to help develop disruptions and alternative actions. The 6 virtual cohort workshops run from March 29th through June 14th. Workshops are on Zoom and run from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All workshops are on Fridays. You can download the program schedule for details on dates from our website. Prior to workshops, there is a required cohort orientation session on Wednesday, March 13th at 10 a.m. So you've heard me say several times that this is an interactive workshop series. What does that actually look like, right? So generally, workshops will begin with a full group collaborative learning session, engaging with the content of each workshop. This full group learning will be followed by small group breakouts, where you will be engaging with a subset of the full cohort and your facilitator to collectively discuss the full group learning and to engage in interactive activities such as mapping systemic oppressions to the everyday level in your workplace or community. We will end each workshop in a full group setting again before closing out the day. There will be materials such as excerpted readings, short videos, or other media that you'll be asked to read, watch, or listen to in advance of each workshop. In your small groups, you will frequently be asked to participate in interactive activities, such as working collaboratively on a Google Doc or a Jamboard. These advanced materials, as well as Zoom links, additional resource materials, and program schedule will be housed in the online Elevating Equity Hub, which cohort members will be given access to. Recognize that these will be challenging conversations, and that what we do to stretch ourselves and stay in this work of disrupting oppressive systems sometimes requires additional support. This is both head and heart work, and Gathering Ground is happy to share that we will have 2 emotional support coaches who are licensed clinical social workers and who are available for some affinity-based group sessions and 30-minute individual coaching sessions to aid cohort members in processing the very real emotions and thoughts that come up during the course of the content. If you are interested in joining the Elevating Equity Anti-Oppression Collaborative Learning Program, the first step will be to submit the expression of interest form. The deadline to do so is March 11th. From there, you will be notified by the Gathering Ground team if you've been admitted to the cohort. And again, the first orientation session for cohort members is on March 13th. We have a limited number of spots, so I encourage you to submit your expression interest form as soon as you possibly can.